Hi friends, it's Becky, and it's time for me to play with some paint today. If you're a new subscriber, you may not know that I sometimes also do art in addition to my jewelry making. And I started a couple months ago a project that I knew would be a long-term project, and it would be a while between each part of this project, and that is to get all of my watercolor paints, like all the palettes, all of them that I've got, swatched out in this large format painter's color diary. This way I can see in one location all of the different colors that I have available to me to paint with, and I already did one with my Rosy Gallery set. So I'm going to pull out my Roman Szmal sets. I have two Aquarius sets. One of them is the Adam Papke one. It's named after a Polish artist. And the other one is an Artur Schibel palette. And I just want to say, the last time I tried to pronounce this last name on camera, I absolutely murdered it. And my friend Bridget commented and let me know that that was her maiden name and how to pronounce it. So thank you for helping me learn how to say that correctly, Bridget. I appreciate it so much. So they're two separate palettes. They've got a not even any overlapped really between the different paint colors. So I'm going to paint them all out today, and we're just going to paint the swatches out. And because I like the look of it, and it also informs you a little bit more about how the paint behaves, I'm going to be sprinkling on some salt. That's something that Miranda Watson always does in her swatches, and I love the way it looks, and I love how informative it is to when you're actually trying to pick out your paint to use. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to be dropping a little bit of salt in there when we do that. So let's start with the Adam Papke palette. And these are Roman Szmal paints. It's a Polish company that they have their paint there. I've got all of the names out here, the pigment information. I love learning about pigments and the differences in them and how they behave. So I like having that here. It lets me know what I might be able to expect from it. Like some of these will have multiple pigments in them, some of them will be single pigment, but knowing how a certain pigment is supposed to behave, that helps when you're making decisions on color mixing as well. So I've got my two jars of water, one for rinsing and one for clean water. And let's just dig into it. There we go. It's just a paint swatching project. And I'm just going to start over here with the lemon yellow. This is PY61. This is a different pigment than I'm used to for a lemon yellow in paint, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think it might actually be a little bit more translucent than like PY3's, which again is not a bad thing at all. There we go, a pinch of salt. And you won't see the salt act immediately, but as it dries, the salt actually dissolves a little bit in the watercolor, and it pushes some of the paint pigment away and draws some of the paint pigment toward it, depending on what type of pigment it is. So that's one of the cool things that it does with it. Alright, and one of the things that I absolutely love about this paint is just how quickly it activates. Like, I'm just barely touching it with this wet brush, and it is just coming right up immediately. Roman Szmal is such a fun paint to paint with. The colors are vibrant. It, again, re-wets super easy. And like the paints that they do have multiple pigments in, those colors are just gorgeous. And they pick out paint pigments that interact really well together for some of those mixes, or do like granulating things. Like one of the pigments that they add will be a staining pigment, and the other one will be granulating, so it like rests on top of the paper while the other one sinks in. and it does really, really cool things. So that was the cadmium yellow. It is cadmium yellow deep, and it's a PY37. And when I've seen cadmium yellows before, usually they're like a PY35. So 37 is different and interesting. Then we've got cadmium red. This is a PR108. And this one is going to be fairly opaque in the mass tone. You can see how that black line almost disappears. But look how it just kind of explodes in the water when I touch it with this wet brush, and it travels over. I love this red. It's like a true red. Warm leaning. And then mineral violet, and this is PB29 and PV19, so it's like a dioxazine violet mixed with ultramarine. And this is one of my faves. I love this. So we're going to get this deep purple in the mass tone. This is another one of those that it's a mixture of a staining and a granulating pigment, because the dioxazine purple is very staining and the ultramarine is granulating, so you get some cool color separation as it dries, and the salt will bring that out even more. Alright, now we've got Prussian blue. As a PB27. Prussian blues are moody and dark. This is a very cool leaning Prussian blue. This isn't as moody as some other Prussian blues that I've painted. The next one in this Adam Papke palette is Ultramarine Green shade. It is PB29. So this will be a less red leaning, less purpley ultramarine, but it's still fairly warm. It's a cooler one, and this is a granulating pigment, so you should see some really cool play as it dries. Alright, these sheets have like 7 sections along the top and 5 down the bottom. And I've only got 24 Roman Szmal paints currently. So I went ahead and just set aside these ones in the middle for what I'm swatching. And when I get more Roman Szmal paints, I've got some room for swatching them here. Because I will get more, I'm sure. I am sure of it. But one of the reasons that I started doing this paint swatch project is because I was starting to want to buy more paint, and I have enough paint, so I wanted to have a chance to play with and reintroduce myself to the paint that I currently have, so that I can, you know, destroy that want monster and use what I have instead of buying more. Especially since I have such cool colors like this phthalo turquoise. It's PB16. Which, like, phthalo blue is a PB15. So this is just, it's not a mix of pigments, it is a single pigment that gives us this turquoisey color. And look how beautiful and pure that is. I love, love, love that. So why does it matter if it's a single pigment or multiple pigments? The more pigments you mix together, the less transparency and clarity you get in your color mixes, in your colors. So single pigments just make it a little bit easier to have like the color that you want without it getting all mixed around. And let's see, where are we next? Oh, Aquarius green. This is a mix of several different colors, and there is nothing wrong with that at all. Aquarius green is a really, really pretty green. It's got two yellows, or no, it's got yellow. It's got PY150, PBR 25, and I'm not familiar with that pigment at all, and PB 29, so it's got a little bit of the ultramarine in there too. And this Aquarius green, it's not the same green, but it gives me some of the same feelings as like Undersea Green, which is a Daniel Smith paint color, which is also multiple pigments together. It's just really moody, organic. This is the moss on a tree trunk kind of a green. You know what I mean? I think Kermit would tell you that it is not easy being green, and I think most paint colors would agree. Alright, and speaking of green, green gold is the next one. This is another multiple pigment color, so it's way more yellow leaning, but it is a PY150 as well. There's a second green in there, that's the PY129, and then it's got PG36 to green it up. And you can see where the gold part of that comes, this green gold. This is a delightful palette of colors that they put together. Alright, and next, quinacridone gold. That is a mixture of PY150 and PO48. It's a nice, deep golden color. And then it paints out to this beautiful warm yellow. And you get away from that mast tone. Cypress Burnt Umber, it's PBR7. Like earth pigments sometimes take a little while to reactivate, but this is like immediately ready to paint with. I like not having to scrub too much on the top of it to get that going. Deep, rich brown. Earth pigments also have a tendency to sometimes be a little more opaque. But this one is not super opaque. I just really love the way this paint moves in water. And then Payne's Gray, it's PBK9, PB27, which is the Prussian blue, and PR264, so it's got a little bit of a red in it. There's another gray in the other palette called Shibbol's Gray. I'm so glad that I know how to pronounce that now. You don't even know how pleased I am about that. And it, I think, is one of my favorite gray colors because it is very violet leaning. This one is much more blue leaning. So you can see as some of these have dried what I was talking about with that separation of pigment. So especially here in this mineral violet, you can see some specifically blue parts where the salt has interacted with it. And that's one of the reasons why I add the salt, is so that I can see how it separates, how it supergranulates. Alright, so that is the Adam Papke palette. I mean, is it accurate? I'd say it's pretty close. For this swatching, I think I probably got a better and clearer yellow on that cadmium yellow than we get here, but the rest of it seems to match pretty well with what's on the back of this. Some of these it feels like it's a little more yellow on this than it is on here. And this is why you swatch them, is because the picture on the box may not actually be exactly how it swatches on the paper that you're using. So I wanted them all to be swatched on the same paper for every single palette that I have, so that I can compare them fairly accurately. So this is the Schibbel, the Arthur Schibbel palette. Oh my gosh. And this one has a lot more reds in it, so it's going to be really fun to paint with. We're going to start with our yellow. We've got a Hansa yellow up here. It's Hansa yellow medium, and it is a PY74. And it goes from that nice deep yellow to a bright yellow when it's diluted. It's not as bright as the lemon, but it's also not as orange as the cadmium yellow. And then we've got our nickel azo yellow, and this is PY150. And sometimes when you get a PY150, it can be a little more on the like pure yellowy side. This one gets you a little more golden. I like this nickel azo yellow. It paints out very golden. And I have just ruined my clean water. That's okay. I knew I would eventually. I'm just glad I made it through one palette without. Because I dip in the wrong water jar often. I do not have a drink on my desk with me, which is a good thing. Alright, cadmium vermilion. This is PR108. And I remember before I learned like all the colors and what they were, whenever I would read the word vermilion in like a book, something would be describing the sky at a sunset or some sort of thing on the hills, and for some reason I always red vermilion as being more like not quite so bright of a red and not quite so orange, because I just didn't have that association as to what that color would be. Which is weird, but you know, you always learn new things at different rates. So like I knew the word vermilion before I knew the color vermilion, is what I'm saying. Right, and then Aquarius Red is a PR 214, and this is one of those specific to the Roman Szmal kind of colors. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous true red. It's like a cherry color. Not quite Bing cherry, but not black cherry either. I would 100% wear a lipstick this color. Absolutely, without hesitation. Alright, now we've got a phthalo blue. This is a red shade phthalo blue. It's PB 15.6. That just means it's less green leaning, and it leans more towards the redder side of that spectrum. It is really pretty. And the thing about like phthalos is they're staining and very strong, so you can mix them with things. And you only need a little bit to get a really good color with it. Alright. If you are new to my channel, you may hear in the background one of my dogs letting me know that she would like some attention. I am her emotional support human, so if I go too long without petting her, she voices her displeasure. One of her favorite things is to get some pets and then move so she's out of reach. And then she just lays there where I can't reach her, and then she's sad that I'm not petting her anymore. Which is just silly. I can't pet her here though because I am busy with this. This is a cobalt blue. I love the granulation immediately on this cobalt blue. This is a spectacular like azure blue sky paint that would give you so much depth in your sky. It's PB28. Alright, so this is the Shibbol's gray that I was talking about. That is, I think, one of my favorite grays ever. It is absolutely gorgeous. Let's get a bunch of it on my brush. It is PB29, PR77, and PG36. And as it paints out, you'll see what I mean with those purple tones. We'll see even more of it when I add the salt. I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer so you can see here. We have more purple tone to this, and we had more blue tone to this one. So it'd be really fun to see what it does with the salt. You can even see like some of that PR177 poking through. That's where you get that. Just as it's drying, it's already even more beautiful. I love that. All right, let's keep going. I've got a phthalo green. This is a PG 36. And this is a beautiful, gorgeous Kelly green. Let me paint that out. Look at that. This is the color that you want to use when you're painting shamrocks in March. This isn't going to be a very true green if you're doing like landscaping paintings. You definitely want to mix it with things. Like these other greens would be much better for landscape paintings, but it is such a beautiful, gorgeous, true Kelly green if you're painting like a rainbow or something. This is the green that you want. It is so clear. There's so much clarity to that. Natural Sienna is my next one. This is going to be an earth pigment. It is immediately activated. I love that, especially with these earth pigments, that it just doesn't take very much. This is a PY43. It's very green. Let's get that phthalo was hanging onto that brush. There we go. I think this and maybe the cobalt blue, if you mixed them together, you might get a really nice, super granulating, like turquoisey sort of color, because you'd have this granulating paint and then this staining paint together. I should do that. I should mix those together and see what I get. I'll do that at another date though. I'm not doing color mixing, I'm just doing paint swatching. Alright, so then we've got our red ochre, and this is a PR102. This one is going to take a little while to activate. There we go. It's the same pigment number as the one next to it, which is the Caput Mortuum. But the way that the pigments are treated will give you different results, or even pigments that are derived from different locations. They're the same pigment, especially earth pigments. That's why you'll have things like Indian red or English red, and it'll be the same ones. So this red ochre is right there. It's really great. Brownie red. Caput Mortuum is also one of my favorite colors. I adore it. Alright, so we've got this one here. It is a very deep mahogany. Like this. It is also a PR102. It is mostly opaque in mouse tone. Just gonna get you a little bit closer on that. Look how beautiful. I love that color. I like colors with personality. Things that are multi-dimensional. It's a lot of fun. And then we've got Van Dyke Brown. This is NBR8. I don't know what the N stands for. I know P usually stands for pigment. Natural. Yeah, this one is going to take a little while to wake up. Earth pigments. There we go. Right. Just going to try and get a little more pigment on my brush. For most of these I don't have to go back for more, but this seems the only one that I felt the need to do that with. Alright, I'm going to give these guys a chance to dry completely. I'm going to brush off the salt, and I'll give you another last look at all of my Roman Szmal paints in my big swatch book. So I will be back once this is dry. And here we are all, now that they are all dried off and the salt has been removed. You can see a little bit more detail on each of these colors. Look at that mineral violet. Look how great that is. The Payne's Gray, the Cypress, Quin Gold, that Aquarius Green. That is absolutely gorgeous. Some of these others, look what it did with that Caput Mortem with the salt. And then here's the Schipul Gray. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I don't know when I'm going to do my next installment in this little series. When I have time, when I get around to it, and we'll do that. But it is so much fun to be able to paint these out, to fall in love with these paints all over again. See, I don't need to buy new paint. I can play around with what I've got. Anyway, I hope I'll talk to you later last time. I will put a link to where I got these from. I got them from Jackson's Art. Each of these sets. I can't find a link on Amazon, so I'll put a link to Jackson's in the description below. I did get my Painter's Color Diary from Amazon's though, so I'll put a link to that as well. And I'll talk to you later. Bye!